Aloha and welcome back to the Kauai Real Estate Podcast. It's been a while and I'm happy to be back. I hope you're just as happy to hear from me. I'm going to start a purchase contract series where I'm going to talk about the different contingencies in the purchase contract. I am not going to try to stretch these conversations so that they're longer podcasts or truncate them so they're shorter. Each contingency podcast length will be based on what's needed to describe the contingency. Probably more information than you need to know, but I wanted to let you know in advance. I'm currently using the 422 version of the contract that was released in November of 2023. We generally get new contracts or new versions in November and May, although this year that's a bit delayed because of the new NAR settlement. We're not going to see our new contracts until the summer. But I wanted to let you know which contract I was using because on occasion the contingencies change. Typically it's just the wording. It's not the contingencies themselves, but we want to be prepared either way. So today we're going to talk about the initial earnest money deposit. That is contingency B1 in our current contract. And it generally just gives three choices for a buyer when presenting an offer to choose between giving the check to their buyer's agent and having the agent deliver it to escrow the day after the offer is accepted. The buyer could deliver the check themselves the day after, the next business day after the contract is accepted, or the buyer will wire funds, the initial deposit, to escrow directly. And then the business days in that are negotiable. So most common is between 3 and 5 business days. This allows escrow 1 to 2 business days to get the instructions to the buyers, and then allows the buyers a day or two to get these wires initiated. Now, what happens? What is an earnest money deposit? So basically, an earnest money deposit is almost exactly what it sounds like. It's showing how earnest you are about purchasing the property. It's typically between 1% and 5% of the purchase price, and it's used to demonstrate how serious you are about the property. Even though it's common to refer to it as a percentage, I think it's actually more beneficial to get a sense of what the dollar amounts are. I've seen earnest money deposit amounts basically from $100 to, $250,000. It really depends on what the property is, what your situation is, all of those things. Like everything else in the contract, it's negotiable. I would not recommend ever having an earnest money deposit less than $5,000 unless you are doing something like a VA loan where you're not actually going to be bringing cash to the purchase at all. So it's not as necessary to have cash in the transaction. And there's a way to write that up. You'll obviously have to talk to your agent about that and get those details locked down. The earnest money deposit is sent to escrow. It's not sent to the seller. It's not held by the brokerage as it is in many mainland states. It's sent directly to the escrow company and escrow holds on to it. And here's the thing about escrow. They are a neutral third party. So that money is not going to get released to anyone until everyone agrees about how it gets released. Now, in most cases, I would say all cases really, but in most cases, if the buyer cancels, the buyer gets the earnest money back. I think I've only seen 2 or 3 cases in 20 years where the buyer didn't get their earnest money back. The reason for this is you get your earnest money back if you cancel for a contingency in the contract. And the buyers have a lot of contingencies in the contract. And I will go over those in future episodes. But essentially, the earnest money deposit is refundable if you cancel during your J1 inspection period. If you have a document review period, and if you cancel during that, you get your earnest money back. Your offer may be contingent upon a loan, and if you're unable to get the loan, you get your earnest money deposit back. The only cases in which you don't get your earnest money deposit back is if you're a buyer and you cancel outside of a contingency, meaning you don't have a reason legitimately per the contract to cancel. If you fail to perform in any way, the seller may have a right to your earnest money deposit, or if it is specifically stated in the contract, if you negotiate a deal and it states that the seller is not obligated to return your deposit under certain circumstances. Now, just to circle back, I just want to clarify, there is no standard amount or guaranteed amount or amount you're obligated to give to escrow as your earnest money deposit. But it is something that you and the seller have to agree on. You also have the option of doing a lower earnest money deposit or a regular earnest money deposit and an additional deposit, and having the additional deposit due after your inspection period, or after your inspection period, your document review period, and your seller's disclosure review period, whichever ends later. So there is some flexibility with the earnest money deposit. Again, like everything else, it's negotiable. It's refundable under certain circumstances, and it's applied towards your purchase price. I think that's about all I can say about the earnest money deposit. But if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I look forward to hearing from you. I hope you've enjoyed this little podcast, and we will be talking about other contingencies in the contract moving forward. Mahalo and have a wonderful day.